Bel and the Dragon. What we're going to see in this is that there is another backing up of the scripture that Bel and the Dragon, the edition of the Greek text of the Septuagint. From a prophecy of Habakkuk the son of Jesus of the tribe of Levi, there was a certain person, a priest, whose name was Daniel son of Habal, a companion of the king of Babylon. And there was an idol, Bel, which the Babylonians would revere. Now every day they were squandering on it 12 bushels of choice flour, 4 sheep, and 6 measures of oil. And the king would revere him, and the king would go every day and would do obeisance to him. But Daniel would pray to the Lord. And the king said to Daniel, "Why do you not do obeisance to Bel?" And Daniel said to the king, "I revere no one except the Lord God, who created heaven and earth." So the king said to him, "Is this one, then, not a god? Do you not see how much is spent for him every day?" And Daniel said to him, "Not at all. Do not let anyone mislead you. For this one is only of clay inside and bronze outside. Moreover, I swear to you by the Lord God of the gods that this one has never eaten anything." And angered, the king called the leaders of the temple and said to them, "Produce the one who eats the things prepared for Bel, but if not, you shall die." Or Daniel, who says they are not being eaten by him. But they said, "It is Bel himself who eats them." Then Daniel said to the king, "Let it be so. Unless I prove that Bel is not eating them, I shall die, and all those with me." Now there were 70 priests of Bel, not counting wives and children. So he brought the king into the idol's temple. And the food was set out in the presence of the king and Daniel, and the mixed wine was brought in and set out before Bel. And Daniel said, "You yourself see, O king, that these things are set down. You then seal the bolts of the shrine when it is closed." Now the word pleased the king. Now Daniel commanded those with him, after everyone departed from the temple, to strew the whole shrine with ashes, though no one else except him knew. And then as he sealed the shrine, he commanded that it be sealed with the king's signet, and with the signets of certain illustrious priests. And so it happened. And it happened on the next day that they went to the place, but the priests of Bel, after entering through false doors, had eaten everything laid out for Bel, and had drunk the wine. And Daniel said, "Men, priests, examine your seals whether they remain. And you also, O king, observe carefully lest anything be out of order to you." And they found the seal as it was, and they broke the seal. And when they opened the doors, they saw everything that had been set out consumed, and the tables empty. And the king was thrilled and said to Daniel, "Bel is great, and there is no deceit in him." And Daniel laughed exceedingly, and said to the king, "Come, see the deceit of the priests." And Daniel said, "O king, these footprints, whose are they?" And the king said, "Of men and women and children." And he went to the house where the priests were staying, and they found Bel's food and the wine. And Daniel showed the king the false doors through which the priests would enter and consume what was set out for Bel. And the king brought them out of Bel's temple and handed them over to Daniel. And he gave the provision that was for him to Daniel, but he destroyed Bel. And there was a dragon in that same place, and the Babylonians would revere it. And the king said to Daniel, "Surely you shall not also say about this one that he is bronze. Look, he lives and eats and drinks. Do obeisance to him." And Daniel said, "O king, give me permission, and I will slay the dragon without iron or club." And the king agreed with him and said, "I have given it to you." And taking 30 minas of pitch and fat and hair, Daniel boiled them together, and having made a cake, he threw it into the mouth of the dragon. And after eating, it burst open, And he showed it to the king, saying, "Aren't these the things you revere, O king?" And all those from the country assembled against Daniel and said, "The king has just now become a Judean. He has destroyed Bel and killed the dragon." And when the king saw that the crowd from the country had united against him, he called his companions and said, "I am giving Daniel over for destruction." Now there was a pit in which 7 lions would be fed, to which the conspirators of the king would be delivered, and every day 2 bodies condemned to death would be provided for them. And the crowd threw Daniel into that pit so that he might be devoured and not even have the good fortune of a burial. And Daniel was in the pit 6 days. And it happened on the 6th day, and Habakkuk was having bread broken in a bowl of boiled soup and a jar of mixed wine, and was on his way to the plain to the reapers. And an angel of the Lord spoke to Habakkuk, saying, "This is what God says to you. The food that you have, take it to Daniel, the one of Balthazar, in the lion's pit in Babylon." And Habakkuk said, "Lord God, I have not seen Babylon, and I do not know where the pit is." And when the angel of the Lord had taken Habakkuk by the hair of his head, he set him down above the pit that was in Babylon. And Habakkuk said to Daniel, "Rise, eat the food that God has sent you." And Daniel said, "For the Lord God, who does not forsake those who love him, has remembered me." And Daniel ate. Then the angel of the Lord put Habakkuk whence he took him on that same day. Now the Lord God remembered Daniel. Now after these things the king came out mourning Daniel. And when he stooped down into the pit, he saw him seated. And when he had shouted out, the king said, "The Lord God is great, and there is no other besides him." And the king brought Daniel out from the pit, and threw into the pit those responsible for his ruin before Daniel, and they were devoured. Now some parts that seem a little strange in that part are answered in the Theodosian version. And King Astyages was added to his ancestors, and Cyrus the Persian received his kingdom. And Daniel was a companion of the king, and was honored beyond all his friends. And the Babylonians had an idol, whose name was Bel, and each day they would spend on him 12 bushels of choice flour, and 40 sheep, and 6 measures of wine. And the king would revere him, and would go every day to do obeisance to him. But Daniel kept doing obeisance to his God. And the king said to him, "Why do you not do obeisance to Bel?" So he answered, "Because I do not revere idols made with hands, but the living God, who created heaven and earth, and has dominion over all flesh." And the king said to him, "Do you not think that Bel is a living God? Or do you not see how much he eats and drinks every day?" And laughing, Daniel said, "Do not be deceived, O king, for this one is only clay inside and bronze outside, and he has never eaten nor drunk anything." And angered, the king called his priests and said to them, "If you do not tell me who is eating this provision, you shall die. But if you show that Bel is eating them, Daniel shall die, because he has spoken blasphemy against Bel." And Daniel said to the king, "Let it be done according to your word." And there were 70 priests of Bel, apart from wives and children. And the king went with Daniel into the house of Bel. And the priests of Bel said, "Lo, we are now going outside. So you, O king, set out the food and place the wine when you have mixed it, and shut the door and seal it with your signet. And when you return in the morning, if you do not find everything eaten by Bel, we will die, or Daniel, who is telling lies against us." Now they were contemptuous, for beneath the table they had made a hidden entrance, and they used to go through it regularly and consume them. And it happened as they had gone out, the king also set out the food for Bel. And Daniel ordered his servants, and they brought ashes, and they strewed the whole shrine, in the presence of the king alone. And as they went out, they shut the door and sealed it with the king's signet and departed. Then the priests came during the night, according to their custom, and their wives and children, and they ate and drank everything. And the king readied early in the morning, and Daniel with him. And he said, "Are the seals unbroken, Daniel?" Then he said, "They are unbroken, O king." And it happened as soon as the doors opened, when the king looked at the table, he shouted in a loud voice, "You are great, O Bel, and there is no deceit in you, not one." And Daniel laughed and restrained the king, so that he could not enter inside, and said, "Look now at the floor, and notice whose footprints these are." And the king said, "I see the footprints of men and women and children." And enraged, the king then arrested the priests and their wives and children. And they showed him the hidden doors through which they used to enter and consume what was on the table. And the king killed them and gave Bel entirely over to Daniel. And he destroyed him in his temple. And there was a great dragon, and the Babylonians used to revere it. And the king said to Daniel, "You cannot say that this is not a living God, so do obeisance to it." And Daniel said, "I will do obeisance to the Lord my God, because he is a living God. But you, O king, give me permission, and I shall kill the dragon without iron or rod." And the king said, "I give it to you." And Daniel took pitch and fat and hair and boiled them together, and made cakes and gave them into the mouth of the dragon. And after eating, the dragon burst open. And he said, "See your objects of reverence." And it happened when the Babylonians heard, they were very indignant and conspired against the king and said, "The king has become a Judean. He has destroyed Bel and killed the dragon and slaughtered the priests." And when they came to the king, they said, "Hand Daniel over to us, and if not, we will kill you and your household." And the king saw that they were pressing him hard, and having been compelled, he handed Daniel over to them. So they threw him into the lion's pit, and he was there 6 days. Now there were 7 lions in the pit, and daily 2 bodies and 2 sheep were given to them. But then nothing was given to them, so that they would devour Daniel. And the prophet Habakkuk was in Judea, and he had boiled a stew and broken bread into a bowl, and was on his way to the plain to take it to the reapers. And an angel of the Lord said to Habakkuk, "Take the food that you have to Babylon to Daniel in the lion's den." And Habakkuk said, "Lord, I have not seen Babylon, and I do not know about the pit." And the angel of the Lord took hold of the crown of his head, and carrying him by the hair of his head, set him down in Babylon above the pit in a rush of his spirit. And Habakkuk shouted, saying, "Daniel, Daniel, take the food that God has sent you." And Daniel said, "For you have remembered me, O God, and have not forsaken those who love you." And having risen, Daniel ate. Then the angel of God immediately returned Habakkuk to his place. Now on the 7th day the king came to mourn Daniel. And he came to the pit and looked in, and lo, Daniel was seated. And when he had shouted out with a loud voice, he said, "You are great, O Lord, the God of Daniel, and there is no other besides you." And he pulled him out, but threw into the pit those responsible for attempting his ruin, and they were immediately devoured before him. What we'll notice there is that the dragon was a live, breathing being that existed in the pit, and that whatever it was that he gave to it destroyed its stomach. Now we can also look at what that gates on the Ishtar gates, and we can see what the dragon might have looked like.